ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
I'm very pleased to tell you Camille O'Sullivan is here today. Camille is an Irish-French singer. She's part chanteuse, part banshee, who creates classic songs and makes them into new shapes. She brings new life to them. Her voice moves effortlessly from a kind of broken tenderness to this beautiful roar. And over the years, Camille's brought her voice to the songs of Jacques Brel, Edith Piaf, Nick Cave, Radiohead, David Bowie and Tom Waits. She's also an actor whose screen work includes the Stephen Frears movie Mrs. Henderson Presents and a performance as Countess Markovitz in the drama series Rebellion. And she's also, get this, an award-winning architect. Enough. Give some space for the rest of us, will you? But she's put all the bricks and mortars aside to follow her heart as a performer. Hello, Camille.
Hi, delighted to be here. Even I'm exhausted listening to that.
Yes, I know. I think we'll finish now and go home.
Who is that person?
I know. You're exhausting me already. Why don't we just cancel this and have a cup of tea?
Let's just forget it.
You look so very home on stage when I've seen you. And you're having such a wonderful time as you're performing as well. But how do you feel up until that moment before you walk on stage?
I'm probably, people probably don't believe it when I've got major nervousness and anxiety when a date is booked in, like Majesty's Theatre or say at home at the Olympia. You're just like, the months are counting down. It's like a little fuse has been lit. And I don't know what it is. I think I'm scared to tamper with it because whatever happens when I go on stage and whatever my Beyonce Sasha Fierce comes out when I step up in there, I have this thing. I love people. I love audiences. But I think I was so happy as a child just singing to myself in a room. I love the spirituality, the feeling and emotion I get from singing. But I'm just scared of audiences. But what happens is the moment you step up on stage, something else takes over. I'm looking out there into the darkness and I catch the little faces and I feel a great amount of gratitude and love for them. But there is like a shyness in me that transfers and suddenly the music takes over and I become inhabited by that. And I wake up with shame at 4 a.m. in the morning going, I didn't realise I was dancing. I didn't realise I was rolling on the ground. I mean, things I would never do in my own life. And my friends who know me go, who is that girl? And a very dear friend of mine had said, you're like an extrovert, introvert. She said, for years I thought you're extrovert because what you're like on stage. So yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I was talking about it with somebody last night and they were there going, but we've seen you on stage. You're not like that. And it's almost like you become what you want to be in your own life. You can be on stage like a child. And what I loved about Shane and Sinead was that authenticity, just to be vulnerable and real. So at this stage of my life, after that time we were all locked away and I was with my cat, I kind of thought, I used to not talk so much because I was embarrassed by that and just sing. And my friend said, you're a bit eccentric. So people have said, we loved you when you were enigmatic, bad Australian accent, but they said, since you're falling apart, we really love it. So it's a bit about giving yourself over. So it's not singing at an audience. I love the communal thing of the presence of an audience and music. And then I'm as happy as Larry in the middle of it all, just singing my favourite songs. But up to that point, great fear.
I wonder if those voices of doubt before you go on are the voices of Ireland. And the reason why I say that is because I remember going on tour in the late 1980s with the first of the kind of really great and original Irish comedians, a guy called Michael Redmond.
Yes.
Brilliant
amazing,
comedian.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him off stage, I was saying, everyone's funny in Ireland. Why are there not more Irish stand-up comedians? Now there is a lot more, but at that time there were very few. Yeah. And he said, well, the problem is in Ireland, if you go off on stage and start to perform comedy, people say, get down, Michael. You're not funnier than anyone else here. Is there something in the culture of Ireland that's a bit like that?
I mean, you hear about the tall poppy effect there. There certainly was back home. Like this, don't be above your station, which is what I love because my mum is French and my dad is 3 generations back Irish. My mum used to always say, I'm so happy you're half Irish and half French. She said, you'd be far too serious if you were French. But she says you've got the black humour because Irish people get in there with the humour. It's kind of being in this isolated island. And I think to have a laugh at yourself before anybody else does, but also that shyness and reserve. I think this culture of drinking and all the rest is a way, like even my hands feel a little numb talking about it because I'll know I'll need a glass of red wine. I said it to somebody in Perth the other day. I said, I'm trying to be on a diet at the moment. This normally says every person, every artist I see has a glass, Camille. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But I do think there is that thing of like, don't think high above your station. But I mean, where I learned at the start of my career was in a room of like 20 people. So yeah, you had to kind of tap dance very quickly to kind of stop the guy from falling asleep, or it was a thing of connection. And I think as Irish people, talking is a major thing for us. And wherever we go in the world, we're like happy babies when we meet another Irish person. We're like, you know, and you people in the corner going, they're talking absolute nonsense. And it's like, we're delighted with ourselves. And, you know, that's what, but that's what I meant about the shame. It's like, it is an honest, like nobody gets up on stage without really caring about what they're doing or being honest with it, because you'd be thrown off the stage back home. They'd be like, we don't believe you. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I think there's a reserve and there is a shyness. And I think...
But there's a tension in that reserve,
there is, yeah.
That can actually make for quite an exciting performance.
Oh, for sure.
That tension, I mean, between I shouldn't sing, but I must sing.
Yeah, and it is a vocation kind of thing. And I think there's a darkness that we embrace. It's something I found really interesting with Australian audiences too, because there's a genuine brightness and a happiness that I found in Australian people. Like we're nice, but we're also like, oh, she was great. She was actually rubbish. We hated her. We have two sides to ourselves. You know, people say Irish are so friendly, and I'm like, I'm not so sure. We have a divilment to us. But what's lovely here, and it's not just because I love old Nick Cave's music and Paul Kelly's, but it's like there is that side of it is embraced too, the darkness. So I find it quite emboldening. And when I'm reaching out to an audience here, it's almost like there's an Irishness or a Scottishness. Maybe that's the background thing too.
I think that's a really good point to make about Australia. There is bright sunshine in a lot of places in Australia, but that means the shadows are ever darker, aren't they?
Yeah.
You mentioned your Irish-English dad and your French mum. Please tell me the story of how they met.
Well, they said I've got it wrong for years. It was only up until a few months ago I got the real story. I've always kind of like been fascinated by my mum and dad's get-together because they were quite like when I said, what was the wedding like? I've never seen pictures. And, talk to daddy, I don't want to talk about it. And then me finding a medallion going, that doesn't match the date of when my sister was born, you know, like for years. So my dad, he had like a mad kind of story himself, brought up in Surrey, and he went to architecture school and then he gave that up to become a racing driver and then became a boxer and then became a sailor at 40 and a world champion in that field. And my dad was in Monte Carlo where he'd got involved in a massive car crash, ended up in the hospital, and my mum was in Bordeaux with her father and had come over to Monte Carlo and was sitting outside near this fountain on a seat, and he'd come out in his gear.
When you say a car crash, you mean in a racing car crash?
Formula 2, yeah. So,
Formula 2 racing car crash.
Car crash, and it was really bad, and blood was, was still there, and he had his suit on, so he sat beside my mum just because he was dazed, and my mum had turned and said, do you need a cognac? And my mum's quite shy, and I was like, Jesus, Mum, that's a bit, forward.
Not a bandage, but a cognac,
yeah.
Right.
And I was like, wow, she knows how to,
right.
I'm so bad, because my mother always jokes, I wish you were more enigmatic and not talk so much like Daddy. So, she's the classy lady. But my dad, he started talking to her and he said, oh, where are you from and where would you like to be? Now, I never knew she had two places you want to visit. And I'm not saying because I'm here, was Australia, because my dad wanted to move here at one stage and she said, no, it's too far away. And the other was England. So he said, I can get you to England. So he had smaller siblings, half brother and sister, and he made her apply to an agency as a nanny to move into his house with his father and stepmother, pretending he didn't know her, to mind the children. So I was like, wow, these guys were incredible. So she moved in and, hello, Dennis, nice to meet you. She had met him, of course, and he set it all up. So, we were born in London and we never really said that to anybody. And he just thought, I want to come back and raise them in Ireland.
So the family relocated to Ireland because your dad wanted you to have an Irish upbringing. Yeah,
which I'm so grateful,
And you settled in Cork, in a highly nationalist Catholic area.
You couldn't have made it up. When anybody, so basically my dad had got into building by that stage and property. He wanted to buy back the land. And basically he saw houses and Mum, no. And they had no money, like the two of them, except I didn't realise what a risk taker my father was. And he then started slowly getting money and he saw this house in the town. She went, maybe. And he went, maybe, that's good enough. It was like, we didn't realise. I mean, it was basically a place that was gun running for up the north. And there was this thing that happened a few years ago in Ireland where there was this bank that was robbed. And down in this part of town, it was all, like, my father said, look, we all knew they were part of the IRA, but if you kept cool, I was like, what did you bring us into? So basically, when the cops were rounding up some of the guys, this guy down on Passage where I was from, he started burning some of the money, and it was going up the chimney all over the town, and people were scrambling for it. You couldn't admit, it was like a scene out, like my life is like Father Ted. And so we were brought up in this small town, and I swear to God, like, there was this old lady up the road, Mrs. H, who was constantly trying to drag us down to be baptised, because Mum and Dad said, you can choose when you want to be baptised. So Mum was Catholic, Dad was Protestant, and the church kind of closed the door. So we ended up being Protestant, but we had to hide.
So you ended up being brought up as a Protestant?
Even now it's hard to say on radio.
Right.
Like, so, people joke, oh, you're black Protestant, but you really hid it. I think for years, even, like, say when I was at Shane's funeral, I was so overcome from the whole thing that I said, I want to take communion. I turned to Fergal, how'd you do it? He said, just eat the thing, you'll be grand,
There's a little more to it than that.
It was more to it, of course. I mean, I have, like, the thing is, I joke about it, but when I was around 15, I did meet with a Catholic priest and with a Protestant priest for, like, the whole year and discuss it. So I did really try and discover what, because it's not too far apart from each other. But I had it all worked out in boarding school. Like, I used to pretend to the master one week I was Catholic and to the mistress the second week I was Protestant. They only worked it out in the last kind of final graduation, something was going on. But it was definitely Wild West stuff. And there was a woman called Dynamite who was like, I knew she was scary. Dad said, oh, she was the head of the whole thing down there. He says, but I got on with Dynamite. So we were like, do you know what I mean? You couldn't... Like, people think about Father Ted. It's real. It's happening there. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, that was the score. And I do love going into churches and getting that feeling of, I don't know, like to be alone in a church, but to be resting at one with yourself and to feel presence. So music gives me that. And I think it came very early from being in those dusty little churches, being beside an older lady singing out of key and another, like, four of us totally out of tune and little birds flying through and you can see the dust, but feeling, oh my God, these hymns are so moving. So that's, when you sometimes look back, how the flip did I end up in this? I think it was that little church, and I do think it was something magical in that way.
I see you as a performer, as a marriage, as such a wonderful marriage between Irish and French singing traditions. In Ireland, you have that great tradition, but there's also the French chanson tradition. Did you get that from your mum's family?
I think, yeah. I mean, neither my parents have anything to do with theatre. Now, Mum was a great painter and stuff, and she's quite shy, but I've heard her... She's always like, I like to stay in the shadows while you look for the stars. Stop talking about me. And I'm terrible that I take her accent off, because people are like, that's the strangest Irish accent I've had to remind them she's French. But I love Irish music, but I never sang it. I mean, other when I toured at the Pogues, I never had sung Irish music because I don't feel it in my body. So all the time when we were growing up, we had this great kind of cupboard you opened and there was Gilbert O'Sullivan and Deep Purple and Rolling Stones and the Beatles, and then Mum's love of ballet and Tchaikovsky and Gershwin and then Brel. And so that little cupboard was where all that magic music. And when I was in college, I kept my toe in. I used to do a little bit of theatre, but then I auditioned for Jacques Brel as Alive and Well, and everything changed.
Okay, now we should explain what this is to begin with. It's English translations of the songs of Jacques Brel, a Belgian-born singer-songwriter from the 50s, 60s, 70s, whose songs are so arresting and moving. Seeing performances of that musical, it's rare to not see people crying.
Yeah. Like, I used to be so embarrassed to cry, to express that emotion. But I remember the moment when I auditioned and somebody had said, you were so crazy, you jumped into it like a black rubbish bin afterwards. I said, I felt so crazy because I wanted the part so much. They said, what are you doing in a rubbish bin? I said, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not like that now, but what you may see in the show...
So you literally jumped into a black rubbish bin?
I did, after it. Why did you
jump in the
slightly low. I'm not sure why. But they just said...
Were you trying to hide in it?
I don't know. I still, to this day, I'm not sure what I was doing. I told you I do strange things when I step up on stage. But they were definitely like, give her the part. Something similar happened with the Stephen Frears thing. I was like, give me whiskey. They said, she has the part. She's crazy enough. But I remember feeling like that was the audition. But I remember doing the show and I remember feeling complete. I was like, I have, demons in my life that I'm not confident, and I do probably struggle with myself as a person, that music to me is cathartic and therapeutic. And this music, I was like, oh my God, I felt like I understood myself. Like, I didn't really understand Irish music. But when I sang Brel, and it might have been that thing of when I was little with mum and dad's record collection, it all came back. But I felt it in my body, and I felt like my dad said, he said, I remember you as a little girl. He said, you were always laughing and smiling and running around. And he said, when I saw you on stage, I could see you as that little girl again. And he says, that's what I see when you're on stage. And I'm a woman now, but that's what I feel like. So those songs, they have something in them that you immerse yourself. And if you see Jacques Brel, I would tell anybody, please look at him on YouTube.
Yes, if you look at those performances, you might well be aware of this.
Yeah.
Jacques Brel was always suffered from crippling fear every moment before, and you can see him as he performs.
Sweating.
He's sweating and his hands are trembling, but he's singing for his life.
When you see it, it's very hard to think that man doesn't exist in the world now, because it's as alive as it gets. And then discovering later that he used to get sick before every performance. And you were like, now that's not saying, oh, that makes me feel better because I suffer from nerves. But through the years, the amount of musicians I've met, it's kind of guided into those who feel they love to be on stage, and the rest of us who are like, where's the exit sign? It's a very strange thing to step in front of anybody. But to sing, but the immersive thing of giving yourself over. I'm the walking disaster. I still haven't worked out my life, but when I sing, things seem to align itself and time passes. And when I saw Sinead many years later, how she sang for her life, she could sing anybody under the telephone book, but she was fragile and fierce and wild and true and authentic. And I think it's that thing of truth. And I think Irish people are, like, whatever you go on about the funniness, I think truth is at the heart of it. Because there's no use to get up on stage now at this stage of my life. I'd rather be with the new Springer Spaniel and the cat. Like, do you know what I mean? That's my joy. So,
you mentioned architecture, and you studied architecture, and you became, like I say, an award-winning architect. Like, you are seriously, properly good. And you gave it away. What happened? What the hell?
What the hell happened? So what the hell happened was, how did I end up in the first place was I wanted to do painting was my thing. Like night and day, Dad and Mum would go to sleep and I'd get up and I start drawing. And Mum, she said, Dad and I are so scared because you're so sensitive. Any criticism killed you. And my father said, Camille, we just wanted to protect you. So he said, you can do whatever you want. Do your art, Camille. Take the first year in art college and do what you want. So then he told all his friends, tell her to be an architect, but I'll tell her not to do what she wants. So I thought then, his friends said be an architect. And I was a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser. So there I was. My sister had been as wild as bejesus. So I thought, I better do what these guys say. So I went off, and the only trouble was I did love it. And I love being educated, and I'm curious, and, but doing well in it was hard, because every Christmas I'd sit there and know that there was something, I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to express myself. So I kept on doing it in college. And it was a mad thing. And so I qualified in college and then went and taught in university and then worked, and those awards came. And what was hard was, I think people are very good, especially myself, at talking myself out of things. And I would have been, you can't do it, your parents are you through college. You're very good at putting obstacles in your way. And you think it's other people that stop you, but it's really yourself. It's kind of holding on to a little dream you have, or it's connecting back to the 9-year-old or the 8-year-old in you. Like I always say to people, what is your real age? Like, what is the age you feel? And I always feel I'm about 8 or 9. And that's the person I try to hold on to all the time. I was in architecture, and all the builders who I've worked with always laughed. They said, we loved it when you came on site, brightly coloured. They said, we knew you were destined for the stage, Camille.
So what persuaded you to kick those obstacles away, Camille?
I think I never would have switched over if it hadn't been for that car crash. Now, I wouldn't want anybody in their life to go through something like that, but it was a positive. It was a kind of a weird day, because I was driving down to an ex-boyfriend, a lovely fella down in the farm in Portlaoise. I had a massive argument with another boyfriend that day in Phoenix Park. And then the week before I'd split up with Fergal, who is my best friend who I'm on tour with now. And I had a crash in a place called Kill. It's a junction. But essentially what happened was I had to learn how to walk again and use my hands again because they were all damaged. And it was a very touch and go situation for the week.
How long were you in bed? How long were you sort of out off your feet?
Well, I was probably 4 months recuperating in hospital, and then learning how to walk took a good 4 or 5 months. So it was a good year of getting back on my feet. But what happened was the mixture of morphine, being in bed, I was euphoric. I was no fear. Like all the fear had been banished. I was like, I love flowers. I'm going to tell people I love them. And then I suddenly was writing with my left hand on the wall, I want to be a singer. I want to be a singer. And my parents like, what are you on about? I said, I need to sing. I never realised it. And I don't care if I don't make money. And it's not about being famous. I just need to sing, even if it's just 2 people in the audience.
See, Camille, there's an ongoing theme in this program that keeps re-emerging, and it was first told to me by the brilliant theatre and movie director Jim Sharman, who made the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
He's amazing.
Who had this long period of convalescence, he told me, in his youth. And he says, if you look, you can see in the careers of people who've gone on to do extraordinary things, you can often go back and see a long period of convalescence, enforced convalescence, that gets you out of being your young self and traps you in a bed, and you really ask hard questions of yourself about what you really want to do in this world. And that was you.
Well, yes, because also I suppose up to a point as a child, you always think that you'll go on forever for some crazy reason. I remember the accident going, oh my God, when I woke up, I was like so grateful to be alive, but also you don't matter. You don't matter. This could go on without you. You know, in your brain as a child, that's not the case because everything revolves around you. And then realising...
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that thought. Maybe that's the key thought there. You realise you could disappear from the world and the world would grieve you, but it would go on without you.
And that is the thing when you are stuck in that situation and you're learning like how to go to the toilet again, celebrating with a cake because you could, things that would embarrass most people, but to you are massive moments in just... like they say, putting one foot in front of the other. But it is basic stuff. The moment you're close to death is the moment everything aligns and you realise what's important to you. And it did come down to that of like, I want to tell my parents, I want to tell my friends, I love you. This is all that matters. If I could never be an architect or a painter again, it doesn't matter.
Let me ask you this question then. Having made that decision, I will become a singer, was that a kind of devil's bargain for you, given the stress it puts you through as the price to be paid, all the stress in the lead up to the show meets the pleasure and the sheer unbridled natural joy that you get from the performance? Is it a kind of devil's bargain?
You're a bit too close to the bone in a good way. Like, wish you could, Richard, come back to Ireland to be my therapist, because you're a bit like... because sometimes along the way I try and recapture the Camille who lay in that bed.
But did you think, I will pay the price for that?
I do, and I think you do, because what happened during COVID was I was a bit... By then, I thought I've sold my soul to the devil becoming a performer. And that's what you do, because you start becoming confused. Who is Camille and who do you do it for? Because the solitude of being a painter is wonderful. You're by yourself and nobody's with you. And I hate criticism. I don't read anything because it's the thing I fear the most. And because if you're not confident yourself, it's a really weird thing. You have enough mad confidence to get you on stage, to have this mad power, but there's another side to you, the doubt, which is good because that means that there's something slightly explosive, and it's a very strange thing, but it's like you pay a price for standing on stage if you're that type of person. Now, if you're somebody who's way into yourself and love yourself, you'll be grand. You'll be like happy as Larry for the rest of your life.
But you'll never produce the tension.
No, and the tension...
And the tension's necessary.
Yeah, and people have said to me, why do you get hypnotised? Why don't you sort it? And I think a lot of artists are scared because there's a bargain that you have to go through. And I remember when I met Judi Dench on the set, and she was incredible. Like she said, the nerves get worse. And any artist I've ever been interested with, they say it's tougher as you go on. It's terrifying stuff.
Podcast and broadcast. This is Conversations with Richard Fidler. You can find more conversations on the ABC Listen app or go to abc.net.au/ conversations.
Now, you have mentioned this man, Fergal, quite a lot.
Yeah.
You told me you broke up with him just before the terrible car crash that had you stuck in bed all that time. Well, it wasn't his fault, of course.
Nope.
He was your boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he's now your accompanist, your co-collaborator. What is Fergal to you these days?
He's like a soul brother. People have likened it to us on stage like a symbiotic kind of thing, that I know when I breathe, he knows when to capture that. And through the years, we found a language that we understood. I'm very moved when I sing with him, and I love him. And, you know, my partner who I'm with is like when we were getting our house going, okay, Camille, we know you love him more than me. Which bedroom is Fergal's, you know? And
speaking of Aidan Gillen here as your partner of many years.
I know.
The great Aidan Gillen, one of Ireland's greatest actors. And he's had to learn to accept Fergal as pretty much your best friend and a kind of a brother to you now.
Which I love about Aidan. He's very, like I always joke, Aidan is the man that brings out the bins and you know, he's the father of my Springer Spaniel. But basically, the good thing...
Sorry, Aidan Gillen. So I'm just going to repeat. Aidan Gillen is the man who brings out the bins and is the father of your Springer Spaniel.
And he was like, would you stop saying I'm taking... But I said, darling, you love bins. We always talk about it. But Tuesday is the day we take them out.
He's got to put them on his CV because that'll humanise the man.
But you know what he does? He does a brilliant thing on my Instagram where he pretends to be the Springer Spaniel. And he's doing an Australian accent at the moment. He said, you know... I'm putting a bab, whatever. He's like,
he's not putting a shrimp on the barb.
No, but he did it. He did it as a joke. He said every cliche going, but you got to check it out. So he does these messages to me. Before he used to do the message as the Raven going, little finger sends you, because when we first started going out, I'd never watched any of those things. Anyway, so I didn't know what he was doing. But Fergal is from an amazing family back in the north.
Did you? How many kids was he?
12 of 13. And when I went out with them, having to learn all the names, Angela, Ursula, Claire, Karma, like I was like, Jesus wept, I'm never going to make this. And like you could see their eyes all kind of like, oh my God. But the closeness, like they couldn't understand. I know. It's all Father Ted, ladies and gentlemen. That's what our life is all the time. So basically, Fergal, like everybody loves him. Everybody, and also he is calm. Like, you know, I'm an emotional kind of charged person. And so this is so gorgeous when we're on stage because, I don't know, it levels it out.
How was he able to bring things out of you poetically? Because I think you've said something about that in the past.
I always get my phrases wrong. I'm always like hit a bird with two stones, like, you know, stuff that of course you're going to hit it with two stones.
Sorry, are you hitting one bird with two stones?
Yeah, I don't even know what the real phrase is. My friends always say you say it with great intent, Camille, but you always get it really wrong. But Fergal has something about all boats with tides rising or something so I get it wrong now. But you know what?
Rising tide that lifts all boats.
That's it. You can see where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks be to God I sing other people's songs, or we'd all be there for 12 years with Valium trying to get through the show. Now, the thing is, with Fergal, it's almost like, somebody said it's like a river running through. He has musicality flowing through his body. I think it is because we both are, it's word spiritual. And when I was trying to work out how to sing as a singer, because I wasn't trained, I realised the way for me was lyric is king. So extract the music, take it back until it's chord. And then I realised that's all down to hymns. That's all down to a sacred thing. Like if you can sing a song a cappella and it can do its magic, that means the song has a power, like Rainy Night in Soho. You can sing that a cappella and they would stand up by itself. And Fergal just has something. I can't explain it, but when he plays, I'm in another world with him. So I'm in my happy place with him. Fergal was living with me after I had my car accident, because one of the reasons we're so close is I couldn't move back to my parents because they lived kind of on up steps from where you parked. And so he moved the bed downstairs, and so he had to feed me and wash me. So it went to a kind of another level of friendship that once you're bedridden, if you go through being vulnerable and somebody is there taking care of you, it's a high level of love.
When you've got a broken body and you need help going to the toilet.
And you're broken in many ways. He was very good in saying, I'll help you sing. I'll help you put your show together, what you want to do. Like in my shows, it's all about variety. So it's all about different emotions and all the different things you could be in your life if you had the confidence and the power. So it means I'm multiplied by 200. I can be sexy, I can be funny, I can be dark. I realised early on, you've got to give the audience some of what they want, but you've also got to give more of what you want, because then it'll be real. So sometimes it's tough stuff, and I'm like, why am I singing? My sister said, you don't make it easy on yourself, Camille, when you start a show with My Death or God is in the House. It's like walking a tight line where you are absolute connecting with the audience. Every night you could do the same show, but the audience is different, sometimes shyer, sometimes rowdier. It's almost like going on a date for the first time. And it's awful when the date goes badly and you're like, oh my God. And your feeling is to try harder like you would on a date.
But when the date goes well, wow.
But when the date goes well, you're out there, you're hugging them.
It's going to have what they call a happy ending, isn't it?
It absolutely. And you're like, this is the best ever. Fergal says you always look so relieved and happy when the show is over, because he knows how nervous I get. But something in certain songs, like say for a song like Into My Arms or Song for Lovers, there's a video or film thing in my head of like a past relationship or a moment with that partner. It's a cinematic thing that happens.
And is that happening while you're performing?
Yeah.
There's a movie playing behind your eyes?
Yeah, but it's with the audience. So it's all in real time too. So you're looking at somebody at the front who might be connecting with you. You're also feeling your anxiety, but your vulnerability is being used so you can be fragile, which is really important. Because it's not a weak thing, it's a really important thing. It's kind of channeling the song to be real. And then fragile wildness, fragile darkness, fragile strength. So you use those things. And what the thing in your head is doing is that's the inhabiting thing. Like you are locking in to realness to you. And I can't explain that because it's not trying to be fake.
You've been talking a lot about Sinead O'Connor and Shane MacGowan. And first of all, Shane MacGowan, tell me how you were summoned by the Pogues, by Shane MacGowan, to perform with them.
Well, I mean, I remember being in our mad little boarding school, and I remember this gentleman gave me a mixtape and had Rainy Night at Soho and a pair of brown eyes. So that stuff blew my mind. First of all, I was going, it's so beautiful. It's so poetic. I don't understand it. And it makes me feel like dancing. And it makes me feel like getting a bit crazy. I'm not sure why, but that voice, I think they changed us forever and made us feel a bit more, I suppose, the punk in it too. A bit of the anger, which was what we needed. And I think Shane and the Pogues wouldn't have been those type of artists if they hadn't been in England, missing home and needing to have that type of feral voice. These guys were like, we were going down in a blaze of glory with them, right? So years later, and I'm remembering standing backstage, I'd been an architect student having a Christmas pie at a party, and I got the phone call from somebody saying, do you want to come down and sing with Shane MacGowan at the Olympia? I said, yeah. So they say, like, now, like in 40 minutes. And I was like, what? And I was like, but I know the choruses, but I don't know the verses. So he's writing it down for me. And I'm on my bicycle with the words, learning it. And that's how I met him. I stepped up on stage into his arms. And that relationship continued where I was laughing, crying, where he always tried to throw me off my feet when I was with him. I saw the faces of the audience crying and laughing. I thought I'm hallucinating. It was like a pack of Vikings or like these. It was like 100 years of different faces. Like you could feel passion and torment and people singing for their lives. And I went, I've never seen anything like this. And they wanted to kill each other. It was quite funny being on tour because they were like the chieftains. I was trying to work it all out going, how come he always sits there? Why does that fella sit over here? And somebody had written, one of the Pogues member had written, like, Shane is either an idiot or a genius. And Shane used to be reading his book in the corner, always looking like they always had an eye on him. So all that madness and anarchy, because I think they were all very much front men. They're amazing men in their own right. Like my head was like, how am I ending up with these guys? It was such a surreal thing.
But they were always a band that I think really desperately needed feminine energy amongst them, just to stop them being so much the Pogues. It's like when they famously performed Fairy Tale with New York with Kirsty MacColl, and having you with them seems to give them something else.
Well, I don't know. It's a weird one. it's such an honour to be asked to sing a song like Fairy Tale, but you're never going to own it. It's not that you don't go along going, oh, I've got to nail that song, because it's a funny one while you're there. You're there to pay homage to an incredible partnership. In your back of mind, it'll always be her song. It's like singing at the funeral too. You've got to be good, but it's not about being really good. It's about sending the love back. And that's a bit what the show is about too. And when I saw Shane, we saw him in hospital about 3 days before he passed away. And it was so beautiful that afternoon. He was just watching performance, a video, and lights were low. And he said to me, Camille, I loved singing you, but I always felt a traitor to Kirsty. Now, first of all, I was like, oh my God, how should I take that? He said, it was so hard those years not singing with her. I said, I always felt it. And I said, listen, I totally understand. And I said, it was always in the back of my mind too, because like she was phenomenal, and the love of what they did, like it's still not tired of that song. I'm still not tired of listening to them or watching the video and seeing her.
So you were with him just before he died. What do you remember of his funeral?
So, God, what was strange about Shane and Sinead, I couldn't listen to the Pogues. I just couldn't. So I just sat and read the lyrics. I just got a lot of comfort, and I hate social media most of the time, but anytime somebody who's amazing, it's one of the nicest places to be, because you can really share people's stories. And people in Ireland were really heartbroken by it, because first of all, I'll go to Shane's funeral, but Sinead was a voice to girls. I think I wouldn't be the girl I am now if it wasn't for who she was, what she said and took the risk in saying. And with Shane, that fire in performance, like I think they're possibly the two most authentic people I ever met in my life, but two most authentic performers who didn't care about brand. Who, how lucky were we in Ireland that they came out in the late 80s and wrote the best songs I think I've ever heard. So when it came to saluting him and having that honour, it was like, I remember the drive down, and like we were in bits, we were in tears. My head was like thinking of teenager Camille and friend Camille and performer Camille. I was like, oh my God, that's a great honour. I'm terrified to be singing Fergal's going, just say goodbye, and just think of the song as saying goodbye, which really helped. It was just the most beautiful send-off for Shane. And I remember seeing Nick Cave and Bobby Gillespie and Johnny Depp. And when I went out to sing, I was with this beautiful guy called Mundy, who was one of his dearest friends. He's an incredible singer, a songwriter who, Galway Girl, maybe you know that song that he became famous for. So I had my glasses on because I was scared I couldn't read. I just remember trembling, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to start crying. I just felt my knees going. And so I held on to him, and I was so happy to be with Fergal and Mundy, and it was so lovely just thinking of Shane and Sinead and looking at Morris. And next minute, I remember looking at the coffin, and it's the bit in the song that gets a bit more defiant. And I thought, what the hell would Shane do? Like, there he is in the coffin. Shane would just go, beep. He'd be like, fuck you, so I'm going to fucking sing, right? And so suddenly it became really, it was weird. It was channeling stuff, but it became really defiant. Now, I can't sing that song the way, because it was a moment in time and it was all charged by the whole event. But it was like fire. And it was really about speaking back to him in the coffin. And so it was over. And then about half an hour later, I was filming the boys singing Fairy Tale. And next minute, Imelda came down and grabbed me. The camera's left on, and all I can see is the leather boots of Victoria coming over the pew, and then the leather boots of Siobhan coming over, and next minute, dancing by the coffin. Now, I knew there was some guy up in the north who was giving out about the sacrilegious, but I was like, we'd been so good for 2 hours. I could even see some of the priests were like dancing behind the columns. So there was joy. There was so much joy and love that day. I can't explain it. So something in my mind didn't want to sing him anymore, but I thought if I could continue, if you could constantly send the love back to them and feel connected to them still, there was some essence of the beauty of that day. So, never mind back home, there's been a lot of people celebrating their music, and there's a lot of comfort from that. So whether it's like the Frames or Imelda or Shane or Sharon Shannon, a lot of Irish musicians, it's just our way of saying, we love you so much. Thank you so much for, it's not like trying to be a tribute. I think it's a selfish reason. One is to feel close. Another is to go, thank you, thank you.
So with this show, are you trying to hold Shane and Sinead to you in those moments?
I think so. I think it is like my head has melted a bit from it, because it's come into question of like in your own life, you're like, what am I doing? Like what is like after, especially after COVID, you're going, what's it all about? Is it giving joy to people? Is it giving joy to yourself? Like, I'm not trying to be on a diet at the moment. It's a blooming disaster. I want to drink my head off to get up on stage. I want to feel the joy with Fergal. I didn't think I'd ever make it back to Australia. Shane and Sinead are gone. What's that about? So definitely, I don't even know sometimes. My hands are out on stage, like doing this thing. Somebody said it's really, you're always kind of holding your arms out, trying to outstretch it. There's a song in the show called the Broad Majestic Shannon, and I would tell anybody to sit down with a glass of wine or a cup of tea, or just be out in the sunlight and read those words. And that explained Shane the boy and Shane the man to me, and Shane the Irish person. It's so beautiful, like a word poetry is bandied around with his work. But I had heard those songs, and I thought I knew his work. But because of what had happened, I just sat reading the words. It is so beautiful. It's not far away from Brendan Behan. And I was like, Shane, you romantic. You were so romantic. You were so soft. I was talking to him. I'm talking to him still, like a crazy person. But I was like, I didn't know you were those things. You hid it because you sang it in a certain way. But there's these lines in it where it's like, and Siobhan said she remembered as children sitting in this gap in the wall. The last time I saw you were down by the Greeks. There was whiskey on Sunday and tears on our cheeks. You sang me a song that was cool as the breeze. So he's there then going, I sat for a while in the gap in the wall, found a rusty tin can and an old hurley ball. So there's this imagery of him being in this place he loved so much, of a family he loved so much, and in and this rusty tin can and an old hurley ball spoke to me, because I was like, these are images we know well, broken things we find. And then the last few lines, he's saying it's useless to laugh and it's stupid to bawl about a rusty tin can and an old hurley ball. And the last verse, if I can explain, is so beautiful. It's like, and so I walked as day was dawning, as small birds sang, and the leaves were falling, where we once watched the rowboats landing on the broad majestic Shannon. And then it's quite defined how he ends it, where we once watched. So to me, in my head, of course, I'm going to think of my Irishness. And you're also bringing to life this poem to so many people. I don't think you need to even be Irish. I just think you need to be a bit of a human and go, you know what I mean? It's the human thing. And I think the two of them, Shane and Sinead, I think that's why they became so worldwide, is because it was the human condition. And that thing we talked about, Brel, or what Nick Cave has, whatever, he calls it duende, this thing, this loss, this yearning. Those are the moments you feel it the most. And maybe at this point I'm unravelling on stage. I think in the unravelling in song and in who you are as a person, that's where all the magic.
Camille, how wonderful it is to speak with you. I've so enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much. My
pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Podcast, broadcast, conversations with Richard Fidler.
Today's conversation was produced on the lands of the Kaurna people. Producer is Alice Moldovan. Carmel Rooney is our executive producer. I'm Richard Fidler. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to a podcast of Conversations with Richard Fidler. For more Conversations interviews, please go to the website abc.net.au/conversations.